Welcome to Better Relationships Through Research, the podcast where we delve into the best practices for committed couples to achieve lasting love through time and space. I'm your host, Daniel Dashnaw. I'm a marriage and family therapist. Before we dive into today's episode, I have a few quick requests to help you get the most out of today's podcast. If you like our content, please subscribe and give us a comment, and let's start a conversation going. In my last episode, I enjoyed my discussion with Vegdevi Manure about BIPOC infidelity, which is Black, Indigenous people of color, and their issues regarding being faithful in relationships. But today, we'll be exploring a topic that has fascinated and troubled many: infidelity tropes in popular culture. Specifically, we'll be looking at American cultural tropes concerning infidelity that affects millions of Americans every year. Infidelity is a subject laden with emotion, morality, and social implications as well. But beyond the personal experience, there are cultural narratives that shape how we perceive and respond to it. In the United States, for example, these narratives are influenced by history, media, and societal values. So let's unpack some of these cultural tropes and see how they reflect and influence American attitudes towards infidelity. First, let's talk about the homewrecker trope. This character is often depicted as a seductive, immoral outsider who disrupts an otherwise happy home. Think about movies especially like Fatal Attraction or Unfaithful. The homewrecker is usually vilified, and the narrative often centers around the impact of their action on the family unit itself. This trope reinforces the idea that infidelity is a threat to the sanctity of marriage and the stability of family. And this trope probably reached its zenith around the 1950s, as a post-war generation settled into affluent normalcy. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the straying spouse trope. Now, this character is often portrayed with more complexity. Sometimes they're shown as victims of a loveless marriage, or as folks seeking something they can't find at home. TV shows like Mad Men or The Sopranos explore this trope in depth and show how societal pressures and personal dissatisfaction can lead to how infidelity is understood in American culture. But when it comes to Americans talking about infidelity in our culture, what about the consequences? For Americans, infidelity often leads to dramatic repercussions. This is the consequences trope. Whether it's in movies, TV shows, or literature, unfaithful characters frequently face severe fallout, divorce, public humiliation, and sometimes even violence. This narrative serves as a moral lesson, warning audiences about the risk of straying from the normative marital path. Now, interestingly, there's also a paradox concerning infidelity. Infidelity is also sometimes romanticized in American culture, especially in the culture of forbidden love. The star-crossed lover trope often portrays adulterous relationships as passionate and genuine, although doomed by societal constraints. Think of films like The Bridges at Madison County or The English Patient. These stories highlight the complexity of human emotions and the conflict between societal norms and personal happiness. Now let's think about the gender dynamics with all these tropes. Women who commit adultery in these cultural tropes are often depicted far more harshly than men. This double standard reflects broader societal views on gender and sexuality. While a man might be seen as seeking adventure or asserting his independence, a woman is often judged as unfaithful and morally corrupt. Now, media and pop culture aren't the only sources shaping these narratives. Historical and social contexts also play a significant role. For example, during the 1950s, the ideal of the nuclear family was strongly promoted. Infidelities threatened that ideal, reinforcing the stigmatization of extramarital affairs. Fast forward to today, and while there's more dialogue around personal fulfillment and open relationships, the old cultural tropes are quite robust, and they do still linger. So what does this all mean for us in 2024? Understanding the backdrop of these cultural tropes helps us to see how deeply embedded narratives influence our perception and our judgments. Whether we agree with these narratives or not, these stories shape our societal framework. As we start to unpack cultural baggage and become more aware of these influences, we can start to question and perhaps reshape them to better reflect our own independent, evolving values as individuals, as couples, and as families. That's it for today's episode of Better Relationships Through Research. Thanks for joining me as we navigate the intricate web of American cultural tropes concerning infidelity. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment if you enjoyed this discussion. Stay tuned for more episodes as we continue to explore the fascinating elements that our shared cultural landscape contains.